In the name of God, please be seated. Take this off. That should be okay. Good. Can you hear me now? Yes. The collect prayer today says, "Inspire us to do what is right." And then it tells us two stories. We hear the story about two widows who have lost their sons and the prophets of God who have brought them back to life. One widow is from Zarephath. The other is from Nain. Elijah the prophet is sent to Zarephath by God, whereas Jesus just happens upon the funeral procession as he reaches Nain. The parallel between these two stories cease as we notice the distinctions and the differences. The widow from Nain finally realizes that Elijah is from God, despite all the things he's already done for her once he brings her son back to life. Whereas the widow from Nain stands alone and silent in her grief. Elijah acts to assure the widow that God has not abandoned her, although God has fed her day by day with a small amount of meal and oil. Jesus, on the other hand, acts out of his compassion for the widow who has asked for nothing. It is Jesus' story that inspires us. We may not have his miraculous powers, but we are often moved to console and to be compassionate. So what I'd like to do with you this morning is imagine together the scene. We are all gathered in the entrance to the city gate of Nain. On one side is a large, long funeral procession carrying the dead body of the widow's son. Watching from within the city is the lonely, mourning mother. And outside the gate is Jesus and his entourage. He never went anywhere without first his disciples and then as many people as could gather around him. Close your eyes for just a few minutes and imagine this scene with me. Place yourself either inside the gates, where the townspeople are, or outside with Jesus and his followers. Now stop and notice the grief-stricken widow who stands alone apart from the procession. See how sad and forsaken she seems. Feel the depth of her sorrow. She has lost both her spouse and her only child. Now she is alone in the world without any source of economic or emotional support. What emotions does she arouse in you as you think about her? Perhaps you are also a widow. So from the inside of you, you know her grief and even her fear for the future. Now turn your gaze towards Jesus. He is also watching this woman. Imagine the burst of compassion that rises in his heart when he sees her grief. Imagine how moved he is to comfort her. but even his assuring words have no impact. Watch then as Jesus moves quickly and approaches the stretcher carrying the dead son. There are prohibitions against touching a corpse that people believe its uncleanness would make Jesus unclean. Notice that Jesus doesn't hesitate. He is moved by his emotion and seems eager to return the son to his mother. Look, see, Jesus is touching the bier, and the procession has stopped. Hear Jesus call out, "Young man, I say to you, rise." And suddenly, the dead man sits up and speaks. How do you react? What do you feel? What do you think? In the story from Luke's Gospel, we are told exactly how the people reacted. Some said, "A great prophet has risen among us." And others exclaimed, "God has looked favorably on God's people." Is that what you were thinking? We are told that this incident led the word about Jesus to be spread throughout Judea and the countryside. We can only imagine what impression Jesus made on these folks. What we do know is how we see Jesus now, ourselves. As he gives new life to both the son and the mother. She is no longer forlorn, and he is no longer dead. They both have new life. Also, as we look at Jesus, we are touched by his compassion, his empathy for this woman. And we are reminded that even in the darkest of times, Jesus is there to comfort us, empathize with our grief, and show us that we are never alone. Amen.